My name is Leela Ahir, and I have the pleasure of being the nominated Wildrose candidate for the riding of Chestermere and Rocky View. I've lived, worked, and been active in the Chestermere and Rocky View region for 35 years. And I'm delighted that I will have the opportunity to serve my friends, my neighbors, in a new capacity after the next election. As a proud Albertan, I believe our province needs a strong Wildrose team led by a principled, ethical, and dynamic leader. I'm here today to show my support for Brian G. and to introduce our next speaker, who also has an announcement to make. Derek Fildebrand is my Wildrose running mate in the neighboring riding of Strathmore Brooks. Anyone who has followed Alberta politics for any length of time will know that Derek is a tireless champion for fiscal prudence and limited government. He spent 6 years as the Alberta Director and National Research Director of the Canadian Taxpayers Federation, proudly holding our provincial government to account. Derek consistently pushed for greater transparency and accountability, and occasionally the government complied. Albertans feel confident knowing that Derek will continue to stand up for them, their tax dollars, and the province's financial future. Like me, Derek is in politics because of principles and integrity. I am delighted that Derek has chosen to run for the Wildrose Party. Alberta, Wildrose, and Strathmore Brooks will all benefit from Derek's passion and intellect. Ladies and gentlemen, my friend, Derek Fildebrand.
Thank you, Leela. Thank you for that kind introduction. Chestermere Rocky View is in very good hands with Leela. It will be a Wildrose riding again after the next election, and its constituents will be very proud of their new MLA, my friend Leela. This weekend, I spoke to a gathering of Wildrose members right here in Calgary. I talked about principles and about doing the right thing, not the easy thing. But 100 days ago, some former members of the Wildrose caucus chose to do the easy thing. They bargained for power and bought it. They didn't earn it. They put themselves before their principles, before their party, and their province. The true members of the Wildrose remain committed to freedom, fiscal prudence, limited government, and accountability. At that meeting of Wildrose activists, I called on those present to cast aside grudges and internal ideological divisions. I reminded them that since we can't count on this government to keep its word or follow its own laws, we have only 1 month to rebuild our party and get ready for an illegal election. I told those members that I would consider my future, that I would do the right thing for the Wildrose and for Alberta. And ladies and gentlemen, the right thing is standing here today and supporting Brian G. for Wildrose leader. Brian is the leader who can take Wildrose forward and give Albertans honest and accountable government that they deserve. Let me tell you a little bit about Brian. He is the youngest in a family of 11 children and moved to Fort McMurray in 1967 when he was just 4 years old. He knows our province from one corner to the next. He attended high school in Three Hills, where he was captain of the hockey team. Jim Prentice is fond of hockey metaphors, so in that light, I can't wait to see Brian take him into the boards. He has a Bachelor of Science from Warner Pacific University in Oregon and an MBA and law degree from Bond University in Australia. At Bond, he was president of the Student Council and editor of the university newspaper. But he isn't just book smart or dashingly handsome. During school breaks, Brian has been a logger, a farmer, a registered trapper. Brian got his Canadian law equivalency at the U of C in 1991 and began practicing law at the largest firm in northern Alberta, becoming partner 3 years later. Over the next decade, while being one of the busiest litigators in the north, he was also able to start a business, teach at Keano College, take on leadership roles in the Alberta Summer Games, his Chamber of Commerce, his Downtown Business Association, and many other community organizations. You see, Brian gives back, and Brian has real-world business and community experience. In 2004, Brian was elected as the MP for Fort McMurray, Athabasca. In 2006, he was appointed Parliamentary Secretary for Transport, Infrastructure and Communities. As Parliamentary Secretary, he was dealing with Canada-wide transportation matters including marine, air, rail, surface issues, and assisted the Minister in dealing with dozens of Crown corporations in the government. Brian also spearheaded all legislation involving infrastructure for our cities and communities, including the successful rollout of the $45 billion Economic Action Plan, the largest infrastructure plan in Canada's history, and making all of the funding recommendations for $1 billion of the Infrastructure Fund. Brian has real government experience, having spent a decade in federal politics before leaving in 2004 to spend more time with his family. Brian has the life experience, the work ethic, and the judgment to lead Alberta. Brian shares my principles. He will fight to ensure that Alberta is better governed. I'm proud to stand here today and introduce to you my friend, the next leader of the Wildrose Party, and the next Premier of Alberta, Brian Jean.
What a great day indeed. Good morning, everyone. Let me start first by thanking Leila and Derek for their support and their very kind words. I think, bluntly, it's wonderful candidates like Leila and Derek which make me believe that Wildrose and Alberta has a very, very bright future indeed. I also want to thank all of the other Wildrose candidates, riding presidents, board members, activists, and members who have shown up today to offer me their support. I want to tell you how much that means to me very, very much. So thank you very much. I'm humbled, bluntly. Ladies and gentlemen, I am here today to announce that I am seeking the leadership of the Wildrose Party. I hope and intend to lead Wildrose into the next election and help Wildrose give Albertans a real option in that election. It took me a while to make this decision because of a serious life-threatening health condition that my youngest son is currently facing. I bluntly worry about him a lot, but I worry about Alberta's healthcare system just as much. I worry about all our sons and daughters and our families and our parents and our grandparents. And these worries have pushed me hard to seek the Wildrose leadership. You see, I spent a decade in federal politics, as Derek has said, leaving in 2014 to spend a lot more time with my family in Alberta. I have 3 adult sons and 2 grandchildren that live in Edmonton. My youngest son should bluntly be living in Fort McMurray, but for most of the last year, he has been hospitalized on and off with an as of yet undiagnosed illness. Visiting him every day in the hospital is very frustrating. There are so many people working so hard to help him. They very much care. They care about him and they care about doing their jobs well, but they work in a nightmare. A horrible, broken, bureaucratic, inefficient, wasteful health system. No one is able to make decisions. Hundreds of thousands of dollars is wasted, waiting weeks for government officials and committees to make decisions on $2,000 tests. It is the most frustrating and inefficient system I have ever seen. My son, like many of his generation, is an intense Canadian patriot. He thinks universal health care is one of those things that makes Canada great. So do I. I do have faith in the doctors and the nurses, but I have lost faith in the system. Albertans actually pay more tax dollars per capita than any other Canadian. And Alberta spends more per capita than any other province on healthcare, and we get bottom of the pack results. The Prentice PC government is letting Albertans down, and they are letting our families down. They show no willingness to sit down with doctors and nurses and figure out how to fix the system. And bluntly, it won't be easy. It won't happen quickly. But if you don't start, it just simply will never be finished. This government, after 4 decades, just doesn't get it anymore. I think Albertans deserve a government that gets it. I think they deserve a well-run, efficient government that applies good Alberta common sense and the Alberta work ethic to the important activities of government. It should be that simple. Margaret Thatcher once said, "The facts of life are conservative." I couldn't agree more. I have been conservative my entire life. I think small government. I think low taxes, and I think common sense efficiencies. These are how we actually serve people. It's about better managing the Alberta economy. Those are Wildrose principles, and they have always been my principles. I believe those are the principles of most Albertans, and those Albertans want Wildrose to be a strong and effective opposition. They want Wildrose and their government to be honest. They want us to hold this government to account. And if Albertans are impressed with how we do things, they may someday actually give us the chance to govern. You see, Albertans are looking for a different government. They are looking for honesty, openness, efficiency, and hard work. They are looking for positive ideas. They are looking for genuine concern and action for those who need help. They are looking for a focus on getting the big things done right. When you get the big things done right, everyone benefits. Alberta needs a government, a better government, an honest government, a government that is not in it for themselves and their friends. Albertans need true democratic reform, not dictatorship from the Premier's office. A government that takes the legislative process seriously and bluntly takes accountability seriously. Albertans need real transparency, not secret laws and regulations that contradict official statement. Albertans need efficient ministries, not cronyism and sole source contracts. Albertans need the government to get down to the business of fixing the healthcare system, and many other areas of government waste and inefficiency. This is the single most expensive part of our government. And most of all, they need a government to build structures and processes that guarantee fiscal responsibility so that politicians stop wasting our money. We have a responsibility. All Albertans have a responsibility to current and future Albertans to do exactly that. We must solve the fiscal mess the PCs have created. No one is surprised by the drop in oil prices except apparently the PC government. In 2007, Alberta had $17 billion saved up for a rainy day. $17 billion is a lot of money. And they had it saved up. But then the PCs took almost all of it and took on another $12 billion in debt. And now it's raining hard in Alberta. And we need our rainy day fund, but bluntly, it's gone. They've spent it. Not only is the rainy day fund gone, but this government cannot control its spending. In the first 7 weeks of this year, the government actually added $200 million in new debt every single week. $200 million in debt every single week. This is not acceptable. $1.3 billion in new debt since New Year's Day. Frankly, it is disgraceful. Ladies and gentlemen, Albertans need Wildrose to work together and to make the government honest and accountable. Over the next few weeks, I will be reaching out to Wildrose members, and I will be frankly talking to all Albertans to make sure we build a very strong team. A team of Wildrose members, of Albertans, that can frankly take on the PCs in the next elections. Together with all of these wonderful Wildrose supporters that you see behind me and in the room, and all across Alberta, we will offer voters a real alternative government. A government that concentrates on the principles of Albertans. I believe that Wildrose principles and electing lots of Wildrose MLAs will make Alberta better for everyone. Thank you. I'm happy to take some questions.
See this election, this coming election, as more of a rebuilding one for you guys, or one that you can win?
No, bluntly, I don't think it's one that we can win at this stage. It is a rebuilding one, but we need in Alberta a strong, solid opposition that can keep this government to account, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to build a strong team. We're going to make sure we reach all parts of Alberta, bring together good candidates, and we will build a strong opposition. And if you vote for the Wildrose, we will make sure that the government stays accountable. We will make sure the government stays honest. And if they don't, we will let Albertans know, and they will take their toll on the PCs.
Brian, what do you make? What's your opinion of what happened in December with the most unusual series of 4 car crossings in Canadian history? What's your personal view of what they did, those folks?
Well, I don't want to get personal, but bluntly, it's a betrayal. It's a betrayal to the people that voted them in, and it's a betrayal to Albertans. I don't find it acceptable at all. I liken it very much to Belinda Stronach crossing the floor to the Liberals sometime in 2005.
Yeah, but it does show a loss of faith in the party itself. How do you bring it back?
I don't think it shows a lot of loss of faith. I think it shows individual ambition. That's what I believe.
The party did lose 3/4 of its MLAs kind of in the span of a month. So, how much of an issue of confidence do you think there is amongst the public in the Wildrose party and in the brand right now?
I think there's a lot. I have been spending some time. But let's be clear, this is not a December issue. These people sat in a caucus, sat with their staff, sat with their families, sat with their constituents, and they were talking about this and planning this and scheming this since spring of last year. This is shockingly embarrassing, and I bluntly hope that Albertans take their wrath out on those people, because I think they betrayed them.
Will you, so I guess the first promise for a Wildrose leadership candidate is, I will not cross the floor to join any other party. Will you make that promise, just for the record?
I promised in 2005 that I wouldn't cross the floor to the Liberals. I certainly won't cross the floor to the PCs. I make that promise. I would never cross the floor. When I get elected, and when people stand up for me, I stand up for them.
Years, you've spent a number of years with him in the federal caucus.
Yes.
What's your assessment of that?
He's a nice guy. He was there for, I think, 5 or 6 years out of the 10 that I was there. He's a nice gentleman. He has different philosophies than I do in relation to my conservative values and principles that I'll disclose. But he is a nice man.
You have a lot of candidates on stage who I'm presuming are endorsing you since they're standing behind you. There's a perception that there's a lot of party support and that there's a push from a lot of the ranks of the party behind your candidacy. What kind of organization are you bringing to this? What kind of support do you have from within the hierarchy?
Well, I've received a tremendous amount of support from the Wildrose party itself, but my support comes from Albertans. I have a great team that has helped me for many years in my elections in Fort McMurray, Athabasca. Fort McMurray, Athabasca is a huge constituency, as you can imagine. It's much like a reflective of Alberta. It's 180,000 square kilometers. But I have support from all over that constituency, and I have campaign teams that are very experienced and are able to get this job done. Bluntly, I have a great team. I think I have one of the best teams that's ever been assembled in Alberta, and we are ready to take on the PCs.
Which riding in, Mike Allen's, I bet. Which riding will you run in?
Well, that decision hasn't been made yet. You'll have to wait and see. It's going to be an exciting time in Fort McMurray in that area for certain.
So it's a toss-up between the 2 ridings, or I believe Mr. Allen's competing again. He'd probably make a good opponent for you.
Well, Mr. Allen actually is, I believe, not nominated yet. He's up against another young lady that is very effective and a good community member, so we'll see what happens. I have made my mind up, to be blunt on, but I'm waiting for the right time to make that announcement.
Will you run as a candidate if you don't win the leadership?
Absolutely.
What about speaking up of is it cause a problem to have the leadership before as opposed to after an election?
Well, let's be straight. We are building a party and a team to represent Albertans. We are building somebody and a lot of somebodies that are going to be extremely strong, that are going to be professional, that are going to make sure they keep Albertan priorities as the foremost in their mind when they represent Albertans. And I think, frankly, that Prentice has called this a legal election against his own party's legislation, which seems, frankly, bizarre, to take advantage of the scenario that he's created. And I think that we're going to find a lot of Albertans, such as these people behind me and in the room, that are going to stand up with the Wildrose to represent their constituents because of what's happened. So we'll see what happens, but I bluntly am trying to build a party, and my intention is to build a party together. It's going to take some time, and it's going to take some hard work, but I believe if we represent Albertans properly, if we make sure that we do all the things right, that sooner or later the people of Alberta will trust us enough to give us the opportunity to govern, and we're looking forward to that privilege.
You're not concerned about having to go into a rebuild mode?
Well, I would rather be in a majority mode, but
You're going to have to be realistic, right?
absolutely, this is a realistic issue. I believe that Albertans, if we campaign properly and show them that we're going to campaign properly and make sure we keep the principles that they want us to keep, which I believe our principles are frankly Albertans' principles, I do believe they will give us a chance to govern. 44 years almost now with the PC government. New broom, sweep clean, my dad used to say, and I think that's a very apt and accurate description of what needs to happen in Alberta. We need a new broom.
If you were Premier now, what would you be doing differently than Prentice is saying he's going to do? He's talking about cutting a lot of spending. He's talking about raising revenue. He's talking about borrowing. He's talking about contingency fund. Would you look for that kind of mix, or do you have your own formula already of what you would be doing? Were you there already?
We already have a plan, Don. We have been working on this plan for some period of time. You will find out what the plan is as the weeks come. You will find out what the plan is as the election unrolls. And I'd rather not talk about it right now in specifics, but it's a good plan. It's a plan that Albertans will like and that Albertans will endorse. I believe Albertans will vote for it.
Well, I was going to ask you about healthcare, and obviously it sounds like that's going to be a key part of your campaign.
Absolutely.
Well, can you talk a little bit about what kind of things you would like to see done in the healthcare system?
Absolutely.
Deal with the issues?
And I'll talk in a general sense. The PCs have made this mess. They've made the healthcare mess. They have made the mess with the bureaucrats. And now they want to punish those people because of their own management mistakes. I don't think that's right. I don't think that's fair. And bluntly, for them to come now and try to clean up a mess that they created for about the 8th time is not what Albertans want anymore. I think they want a clear vision. We have a vision. We are going to give that vision to Albertans, and I think they will support that vision.
Can I ask some of the obstacles? Like, do you have enough candidates for all the ridings?
We will have enough candidates for all the ridings. And healthcare is very near and dear to me. I have spent the last 3 months watching healthcare in action. And it's shocking. It's utterly shocking. I've managed many businesses, owned many businesses, and I can do a better job. They're all small businesses, but I think that's what Albertans want, because they want somebody that's practical, that has some common sense, that has actually managed business and been in the workings of Parliament. There's many different jobs in Parliament, and I was doing my job working and building legislation and consensus with the Bloc Québécois, with the Liberals and with the NDP and minority governments. And we passed many bills through them without their assistance, but working against them to get their assistance. And it worked very efficiently.
In the House, if you're elected and win a seat, are you going to go in with your hair on fire every day, or you're going to take this moderate, less personal?
Well, that's a good way to put it, Don. I noticed you're not wearing pink today. This isn't Kick a Ginger Day, but it is anti-bullying day. And I will tell you, if anybody knows the anti-bullying issue, it's somebody with red hair from Northern Alberta. I think what we need is a government that looks for positive reactions, not negative ones. As I've said, I have nothing bad to say about the Premier. I have nothing bad to say about Jim Prentice, except I think he's getting it wrong, and I think he's headed the wrong direction. But I do not want to be a dog barking at a wall. I want to give positive ideas. Our team wants to give positive ideas, and we want to move forward and show Albertans that we can be trusted.
How do your values differ from Premier Prentice?
I think in a number of ways, but for the most part, you're going to have to see what happens in the election coming ahead. I think what you'll find is that we have a different method to get better results.
I just asked you, after you resigned as an MP, you made some comments about the need to perhaps slow down oil sands expansion and take a harder look at that. One, I guess, can you explain a little bit about what you were saying there? And two, do you think that potentially is going to be an issue?
Have you been to Fort McMurray?
Not recently, but yeah.
I invite all of you to come up to Fort McMurray and see what happens when oil production is not managed properly, when extraction is not managed properly, when there's no foresight, when there's no vision, when people allow anyone to go forward. We have a resource, an incredible resource, 1.9 trillion barrels that are sitting in the north of Alberta that are ready to be extracted. Ready to be managed is a better way to put it. But we're discounting our oil by up to 30-40% to the Americans. We have one customer. Is this new? No, it's not new. PC's about 44 years to decide to find different customers to buy the oil. They are not managing it properly. They are letting it happen sporadically and in a rush at our expense. I believe, and our caucus believes, that quality of life of Albertans trumps those things. And we need oil. We definitely need people to work the oil, but we need to make sure we manage it in such a way that we get our top dollar for it, that we don't discount it all the time. We have to find other methods to get it to the west coast, to the north, and to the east. And we should have been doing this many, many years ago. But quality of life of Albertans. Come up to northern Alberta. See what's going on here. It's quite shocking. You have 3-hour lineups to go through downtown Fort McMurray, which is only 1 kilometer long. That's in the morning and the night. The infrastructure there is bluntly reflective in a bigger way of infrastructure all over Alberta. It's not sufficient.
But generally, on conservative parties, both the Wildrose and the PCs have generally not wanted to put the brakes on expansion.
I did not say brakes.
So how do you,
what
are you actually proposing then?
To manage it better. We know many things. First of all, we know that oil goes up and oil goes down. We know that what the deficit that the PCs have started and are going to grow and grow and grow by $200 million a week now is unacceptable. We knew it was coming. They could have managed it better. They have not done so. So I did not say put the brakes on it. I said manage it better. There are groups that actually work to recommend things to the government on how to, for instance, manage the labor supply, how to manage it so that the infrastructure is built in a way where you're not competing with everyone else. These are mega projects, $2 billion and $10 billion projects or more. They are huge projects and they should be planned better. They should be planned better so that labor costs are not driving up the cost of oil production. They should make sure that the infrastructure that the workers have and the people in Alberta have is sufficient to have a good quality of life. Now, if there's no more questions, I actually have some more meetings to do. I really appreciate your time today. And if you have any more questions, please don't hesitate to get in touch with me. Thank you very much.
Thank you again to everyone for coming. I would like to take this opportunity to thank our nominated Wildrose candidates, our friends in the media, and of course to our Wildrose members and supporters. Thank you so much for coming out today. Have a wonderful day.